Today is September the 9th in 2009. We're at Indiana State University's College of Education, University Hall. And today we have with us Greg Ulm, who's agreed to speak with us as part of the Laboratory School Oral History Project. Dr. Ulm, pleased to meet you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Could you tell us a little bit about how you became the principal of the laboratory school?
Yeah, that's a good question, an interesting story, because I had decided that I wanted to come back and work on my doctorate degree. And I had applied for several institutions, Arkansas and Michigan and Indiana State as well. And I actually came back one day to get the counsel of Jim Rensler, who was the director of the State High at the time. Of the university school had been renamed. And I walked in and Jim greeted me and he said, "I'm so glad to see you, Greg." And I said, "Well, it's good to see you, Jim. I'm glad you had some time and just need to talk to you about some things." And he said, "I need to talk to you too." And so I told him what I was thinking, and he said, "Well, I have an answer for you." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he said, "You need to come to Indiana State and work on your doctorate degree." He said, "Gary Klinkenberg, who had been the associate director here, resigned this morning about 2 hours ago. He's going to take a principalship, I think it was over at Greenfield. So he said, if you'll come, you can do your doctoral work and work at the university school both." So that's how I got going.
Interesting. You were in the right place at the right time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. At the time that you were principal, what were the main goals of the laboratory school?
Actually, the main goals were something that I inherited, both in terms of trying to sustain the work of the school and also to extend it. So one of the things that Jim had said to me is, "Greg, part of your work is going to be responding to the fact that I think people intend to close the school." And so there were things that I felt were critical. Really didn't want to make that a public expression. You know, I didn't go around saying to people, "We better do this because," but I did say, you know, let's see if we could take the work that's critical to who we are and how we are and really extend that as best we can. The school always had a strong goal in teaching because we had a very diverse student population. We served not only a district, which was this area right around, kind of an inner city area right around the university. It's changed considerably since then. But then we also, about 50% of our students came by application from throughout the county. And so strong teaching to address the needs of a diverse population culturally and academically was really important. That was also important because it was our intent to model best practice and to engage practicum students and practicing students in a legitimate classroom environment where you're really trying to meet the needs of all students. And beyond that, there was also kind of a higher ed focus on the academic, the intellectual performance of each of our teachers. So we were expected to research, we were expected to publish, and we were expected to teach and provide service. So that was really a strong challenge to us. And basically, I think the way we tried to address that is to really look programmatically. Where could we create new opportunity? Where could we create a research base or research the work of our teachers and students in that setting? So it was, those were a part of our main goals, but also they were very complementary to what we had been doing in previous years.
And could you remind me again of what the time frame that you were principal at?
1985 through 1992.
1992. So, okay, and you touched on it a little bit in talking about the goals, but could you talk a little bit more about the actual role that the laboratory school played in the Terre Haute community itself?
It actually played several, I think. One is that it was a primary site for students to come in. observe, and to participate. As it became apparent that the school needed to extend that, then we became a part of the dynamic of that happening in a variety of educational settings within the county. Then additionally, as it became apparent that the laboratory school setting was not a model that was going to be continued, we really worked with colleagues in the county, in the School of Education, to actually create a professional development model. So that, one of the things that we did is the year that I was president of the National Association of Laboratory Schools, the keynote speaker, her focus was around professional development schools, and both how they were alike and different from laboratory schools and how we might respond to that. So that was in one way. I mean, professionally we were trying to extend and connect both. Another way is that programmatically we actually tried to create opportunity for other students throughout this area to participate. So we had, for instance, Saturday enrichment programs. Ken Walker and Ed Seig and Maury Miller and several people were a part of an initiative along with Dr. Renser and myself to actually create Saturday morning enrichment opportunities, just not for gifted kids, but for kids who were really looking to extend their learning. During that time we would have parent group sessions where parents would gather in a space like this and talk about the challenges of rearing their children or the challenges of educating their children. We had really good resources, Liam Grimley and his Child magazine and things. We just really used the relationship between our school and the School of Education was very beneficial, I think, for both entities. Another thing that we did was our summer workshop. So Bill Mooney and Charlotte Boner had a summer science camp. Judy Grimes had a summer camp for music. We had art during the summer, so strong emphasis on the arts and sciences. So programs like that. Probably, Cindy, you think about it, our move towards a more service learning kind of a framework would have fit nicely with our school. I wish I could have had the vision to see that way in advance of the actuality, but that certainly represented our disposition and how we wanted to work in our community.
Can you place the laboratory school here at ISU sort of in a national context? You mentioned the Association of Laboratory Schools. Were there many across the country, or were they more experimental?
That's an interesting. Some were more experimental than others. At the time that we were, during that period of time, since Dr. Harley Lautenschlager became director, I think maybe in 1955, Harley believed strongly in the NOWS group. And I think during that period of time there may have been somewhere between 70 and 90 schools. At some point in time, some schools would close while new ones were opening. There was never an absolute trend towards, there was always a disposition towards closing them, but at the same time, others were seeing the value and were opening them. We tried, during the time that I was the director, we really tried to nurture a stronger rapport with Ball State's laboratory school and did some cooperative things with them, created some things programmatically. The National Association of Laboratory Schools still exist. There are still laboratory schools. I even went to China in 1987 as a part of Dr. Hazlitt's, the consortium for the Chinese USA, and tried to actually look at key schools in China as a potential way to link our educational programs with their educational programs and our needs. And that to me was the kind of thing that might have allowed us to extend our existence, but it did not.
Who were some of the most influential faculty who were teaching here at the lab at the school when you were principal?
My history at the lab school begins when I transferred here to Indiana State, became a part of the teacher preparation program. And at that point in time, and this goes back quite a few years, Cinda, but being a teacher at the lab school sometimes was a shared position where I would be teaching my college students in the context of my laboratory school classroom. Often at the same time for somebody like Jim Mulligan in the Department of English. Jim began his teaching career here and then moved into the College of Arts and Sciences. And Dr. Benita Gibbs in elementary ed, I mean, really a significant contributor to elementary education, had to follow the same model. Jim Resser is director here. So we had some people who actually started teaching here and then went over into science or the college or into the School of Education and became key contributors in that context. That was a really good model because it kept them connected here while it extended their work there. Beyond that then, we began to see more people appointed just for their positions here. So to be classroom teachers in this setting, but not with the idea that they were going to move into a position within the university at any other level. That model probably was necessary, but it also created, to me at least, some distance between what we were doing and what somebody might be doing in their college class. A couple of those programs are exceptional. One being, for instance, early childhood. Jan McCarthy, nationally, internationally known early childhood educator, made sure that we met monthly, looked at programmatic, how we were doing, what we might be doing in our future, how do we assess our effectiveness. So that kind of leadership brought, for instance, the Early Childhood Center that started over at Married Student Housing, now at Franklin Elementary, also created the early childhood programs here at 3, 4, 5-year-old here in the university school, resulted in the development of all-day kindergarten curriculum that was written for the state of Indiana. Also resulted in being the first early childhood programs to be accredited in the state of Indiana by the NAEYC. So you can see that that was a strong influence when you looked at elementary ed and Benita Gibbs and some of her colleagues' reading focus in our primary and intermediate levels was a strong element. Math in our elementary, middle level, and high school was a strong element. Science with Shirley Waterman and others, Bill Mooney. I mean, each one of those programmatic elements then had the opportunity to engage people in research, in publication, in development. So that rapport to me was a critical element of the success of the school. And I think some people would argue probably a critical loss when we didn't have that laboratory setting to work through those kinds of ideas.
Well, and that sort of brings me to what are some of your favorite memories of being here at the lab school?
You know, my memories, and I made some notes so I wouldn't forget. The memories are built around the culture of the school, and that's kind of a highfalutin way of saying how we felt about one another, how we worked for one another, how we worked with one another, what we tried to achieve, what we understood our mission to be. I mean, it was wonderful to have college students engaged with our children or our young adults. You could really see the responsibility that our children took for them, and the enjoyment and the gain that they had as a result of that relationship. So that, to me, that's always a memory, that it was just the engagement, the interaction, the expectation was just very fulfilling and very challenging. I mean, it was, to me, a strong part of my memory. The other thing is that we were such a diverse population, ethnically, economically, within the community as far as just geographic location. And the interaction of those children, how they worked through their problems, how they understood one another, what they affirmed for themselves as what they wanted to achieve, was very conscious. They were very conscious of the differences and how they needed to aspire to contribute to the welfare of everyone. So, you know, we would get, I remember 2 young African-American students. Their single mother brought them in, and in both instances they were struggling at their other school, one in elementary and one in middle school, because they just seemed to be the brunt of a lot of what we call bullying today, and intimidation, and making fun of. And I could see no reason why they couldn't be successful. They just seemed to be such gentle people, and, you know, they probably had some. So much so, Cinda, that when his mom came in later that day, I kept him in my office, and when we sat down at the big conference table, she said, well, why don't you tell me what's going on? And he looked over in the corner, and there was some playground equipment that had a plastic bag. So he said, the principal beat me with that plastic bag. And so I said, well, you know, maybe we ought to talk a little bit more about that. So then actually, we talked a little bit about it, and he actually we actually then set up some times where we came down and we started to talk on a regular basis. And Tamara Lindsay, his teacher, who was an exceptional teacher, began those conversations with him too. And he went a long way towards being able to control some of those behaviors. There's lots of instances like that where I thought that the kids were always telling me, this is what really works with me, why don't you do more of that? It wasn't me telling them how they had to be. I know my junior high students one time said, you know, in retrospect, you know, Dr. Ulm, you used to go around helping us, finding us doing the right thing, so you didn't have to come around and respond to all the things we weren't doing right. And to me, that was the sense of the school. Our music program didn't take exceptional learners and make them more exceptional. It took all the learners who wanted to be a part of it and made them exceptional. I remember a professor of elementary ed psychology said, you know, it's crazy having a band program over there at the lab school for 3rd graders. You know, they can't even hold the instrument up, much less blow a note. And my son said to me, he said, you know, Dad, I only blow 3 notes, but I can blow them perfectly. He said that to me in 3rd grade. So that's a part of my memory as well, that there was an expectation that that's all right, and you should be doing this. And the more that you can do things like this, you know, Jeremy Woods was just here in the building a couple weeks ago, and he had been up to Chicago to meet with his band teacher, Judy Grimes, who taught in this program. You know, to me, those are memories that I'll treasure for. I hadn't really started thinking about any of them until you invited me to come here today.
And you have such a treasure trove, and the emphasis of the laboratory school, sort of the individual attaining his or her full potential, would provide opportunities for a lot of people who may never have been able to discover those things about themselves. Well, how did you feel? You've talked a lot about how close, you know, how you cared so much about each other as faculty members, and the relationship between, you know, the faculty, the students, and the people involved in the classroom. When you learned that the lab school was going to close, how did that affect you?
I was saddened deeply and wept. I think, I also recognized that that we had worked well and purposefully, and didn't create anything more exceptional than what had been there. I mean, we really did very good work with one another and for one another. And I was beyond being saddened. And, you always wonder how much do you say or not say. But I also recognize that it was a wonderful community of parents, of friends, of children, of colleagues, and that they needed to feel exceptionally good. And that as a part of the grieving process, that we had to make sure that they had a chance to celebrate and to recognize one another and to create some kind of a legacy that they could appreciate and take with them. And that was going to be our focus. And we worked really hard to respond to that. And so we weren't sad for long. We just said there's a different kind of work to be done.
And that sort of leads into the next question of what has motivated you to stay involved with the College of Education even after the lab school doors were closed, so to speak.
It's interesting, isn't it? I talked to some friends and colleagues, and they were so pleased to know that the former laboratory school was being renovated and going to continue to be a part of teaching and learning in the state of Indiana as the new College of Ed. And I think more than anything, I really, it's easy for me to be involved because I believe so much in the contribution that Indiana State and the Campus Lab School has made to our profession. And I thought too, and made some notes to myself, when I came here in 1966, I was a history and philosophy major, and I needed to complete, in addition to some professional courses, I needed to complete my professionalization of my certification for teaching. And one of the things that immediately struck me is that, first of all, intellectually, this was a good place to be. Inspirationally, people really inspired me to be a good learner and a good teacher. And developmentally, they really did, they were very progressive. They gave me teaching, a teaching foundation that has lasted me for all of this time. And not in the sense that it lasted me because of what it was in its essence, but because of how it prepared me to understand my profession and to grow in my profession. So that was really important to me. And to me, that's what I would want for every one of our students and faculty and members of this academic community. So it's easy to be involved, and I believe so much in our dean. I think Brad is just an exceptional individual, and I would want to serve him in any way that I can and support his college. So. What
hopes do you have for the future here at University Hall and for the College of Education overall?
Well, I think that probably my hopes are that people will continue to make their significant impact, that they'll continue to bind the work of the college, that they'll continue to create a teaching corps that is, and counselors and psychologists and special needs professionals that are really exceptional in their field and make their mark. And when they go into a school, other people in that school say, wow, I'd like to go there too. It's such a, they're such good people. She is such a good teacher. He's such a good counselor. I'd like to do that too. And, I know that that's what they will do, and that's what I would encourage.
Is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you would like to share with us now?
I thought about it. I actually tried to prepare myself when you ask about outstanding individuals. It's very difficult to be inclusive of all the people that we could possibly mention. And I tried to do that by talking programmatically about, but it is fair to say that when I was here during the time, Marty Cornelius taught in the high school, Ada Kukurisis taught English, and Stan Evans taught English, and Noble Corey taught math, and there were just exceptional people. And in their totality, they need to understand that they're included. That, I could not pick out the most outstanding. Jan McCarthy is probably an exception because she's just outstanding. Diane Brown and Jane Menville actually worked in the kindergarten setting and made happen what Jan and her colleagues envisioned. Gail Gotchling in the early childhood program, Rose Dilling. It's just, there could be names upon names that you would mention. But most of all, it was when there was that rapport and collegial relationship between the college professor and his or her classroom and the university school, the laboratory school teacher and his or her classroom. So when you think about professional development schools, I would say that that's probably a rule that fits that context as well. Wherever there's really that kind of rapport and relationship, I think significant things can happen. So I just didn't want people to think that I ever forgotten or left them out of that recognition. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you sharing your memories and thoughts of the laboratory school.
Thanks, Cindy.